So yesterday we debuted Black Ops 4 here up on the channel. Unfortunately, we didn't get as many videos up on the channel yesterday as I would have liked to. Just the way the timing of things worked out just didn't work out in the best favor there. But we're gonna have some videos today, two in particular, this one, and then one later on in the day as well. And then of course, going on throughout the weekend, we'll have a ton of stuff for you guys if you're interested in Black Ops 4. But that said, today I wanna give you guys my actual thoughts and feedback and breakdown of the game, because that's something that yesterday we put up the raw gameplay for you to see, but I didn't really give you much of my thoughts regarding the game. And so this one I want to give you guys my 100% genuine thoughts, my just real raw thoughts and feedback on the game, because I know it's something that a lot of people were asking me over on Twitter and the comment section and everything like that, and it's a lot easier to make a video actually discussing all of it because there is so much that I have to say about the game, but in comparison to just typing it out or on a reply on a tweet or something like that, it's just so much easier to do it all in one place. So we're gonna be doing that here today, but honestly, first things first, a little disclaimer, truthfully, I think it's too early for me even to know if it's good or bad. What I feel like is a little unfair to the developing team or anyone involved is to immediately jump on the "this is trash" train. That's something that always happens every single year. This year obviously being a little bit bigger because admittedly it might not be what everybody had hoped for. I personally think that once you get your hands on it, it's a little bit of a different experience, but from the outside and even just whenever I heard the initial reports and leaks or stuff like that, I was even very skeptical. So my thoughts were relatively in the same track as a lot of people where you're a little skeptical and maybe even a little bit worried, and so that's totally valid. And so with that said, don't get me wrong, you're definitely entitled to your own opinions and I respect each and every one of those, but from my perspective, I only hope for a little open-mindedness from the community because, like I said, it's so early for the game. Having seen and played are two completely different things, and honestly, I can tell you that with certainty because I've done both. But you can't really truly understand this game in those 3 multiplayer matches that I played or anyone else who captured footage played, because it's just such an in-depth game. And honestly, I'm fairly certain the general public didn't even get the full length that people that went out there to record got with hands-on time. So if I'm not mistaken, myself and my other creators out here actually probably have some of the most hands-on time of anyone in the world right now, which is strange to say, and I owe it all to you guys for the support, but that also I think makes the gravity of what I'm saying even more grand, because I do 100% stand by the fact that I said it's a completely different thing whenever you watch it and then when you play it. So again, coming back to just the open-mindedness, I hope that that's something that can be applied and genuine thoughts, feedback, and discussion can be shared and circulated around instead of just a, well, this looks like garbage type of thing. But admittedly, I don't know if I like, dislike, love or hate the game, but I will say that I had some fun above all else, which is something that honestly, to me, is much needed. But what I feel like I can give you guys a little bit more of an accurate depiction of is the individual pieces of the game. So let's break those down a little bit. I have a little bit of strong feelings about some things one way or the other, so let's talk about those too. So let's start out with the gameplay itself. I said this a little bit over on Twitter yesterday, but it's a really interesting combination of the vibes that I get for the gameplay. A lot of people may jump right into the Overwatch, the Rainbow Six stuff, and there really is some elements of that, of course. That's honestly one of the biggest expansions and breakaways from the Call of Duty tradition that we know of, but one thing that we end up seeing, and it comes down to the core stuff, is that to me it really feels like a Black Ops 4 with the aesthetic of Black Ops 3, but with elements of Rainbow Six Siege and Overwatch in there thrown into the mix. Now, one thing that I will say is that honestly, whenever I heard that the game was going to be similar to Overwatch, I was not a huge fan of that at all. But the only thing that I really take away from it is kind of the regen on when you can use your abilities type of thing. So, for example, if you end up just regenning your health, that's your L1 by default if I'm not mistaken, and then you end up getting that. Once you do that, you'll have a cooldown time, and so whenever you end up looking at it, it's very similar to the animation of what Overwatch has when your ability will refill back up. It's almost like a progression that you can watch, and then it will spring into action, very similar to what we saw, say, with the Specialist from Black Ops 3, that sort of like a yellow splash whenever it ends up actually opening up and you're finally able to use it, kind of like that, but not as grand a scale where it'll come up and say like, hey, this is ready for you. In that sense, it's one of the only things I really take away from the Overwatch element that I really noticed it all that much. I don't play Overwatch all that much as well, so maybe I'm missing some things here or there, but other than that, the entire hero system is, I guess, comparable, but not really. I think it's more so, once again, on the operator side with Rainbow Six Siege, because you can't pick more than one of each operator in that game, you can't pick more than one of each specialist in this game, and so to that, it really, in my mind, resonates with the same sort of thing. But one thing also that really really comes back to the Rainbow Six Siege is just the abilities that each specialist will have in general. We have a spiked or barbed wire, we have an actual like shield that deploys upwards. That kind of stuff is just so reminiscent of Rainbow Six Siege, which from a tactical standpoint is good, but I guess again it comes down to what you feel, how much should influence Call of Duty. But when you talk about Call of Duty, does it still feel like Call of Duty? Well, I think this is very similar to what we saw with Black Ops 3 or any other change up that we had where the community isn't necessarily so sure, but I think that once you get your hands on it, it will definitely turn around to at least be slightly different than what you perceive immediately. Personally, I still think it still has that Call of Duty feel. It does feel a little bit interesting in some locations where some of the core things are completely ripped out, like health regeneration. It is weird that sometimes I wonder if the game was built for thrusters and it was taken out because some of the water stuff, well, it's really clunky in a sense because you have all this water to get around, but you don't have many ways to get out. So that's something that I think is weird. But other than that, really, I think it comes down to feeling like Black Ops 2 more than anything else, but with those elements thrown in and the aesthetic of Black Ops 3, like the same color scheme, the same weapon model, sizing, animations, all that kind of stuff with Black Ops 3 aesthetically. But whenever I actually played it, I did get a lot of the feeling of playing Black Ops 2. I kept thinking of myself playing Raid or Standoff, and to me that's a good thing, but maybe you guys have a completely different view, and that's, again, totally cool. Now, talking a little bit about the health regeneration and health itself, I do think it's very weird and very strange to have 150 health right off the bat with manual health regeneration, just because we've never seen that before in Call of Duty. The one thing that I will say, again, a lot of people might not be too fond of that idea, but the one thing that I will say is that it becomes second nature very quickly. I noticed that honestly, after the first game, I was automatically tapping L1 regen my health. That was something that it really comes naturally. The only thing that I'm not a fan of in the slightest is that it ends up sacrificing what may have been another lethal or a tactical that you could have taken in the create a class system if you want to use those. And speaking of that real quick, because of the way the abilities and everything worked out, I did not come across one single grenade, if my memory serves me right. So you might see a lot less grenades in this game because people are prioritizing other things over it. So that's one thing I guess that's kind of good to take away, but I guess we'll see as time progresses just how true that holds to it. But again, health regeneration, it is a really big curveball and a change up, and I was honestly probably in your shoes where I thought it was a horrible idea. I thought it was something super stupid, but whenever I actually played it again, it still is not my favorite, and I wish that it could have been changed out for something else, but it is something that becomes second nature very quickly if you end up playing a handful of games. Now, as for another big thing though, is the fact that we don't actually have kills anymore. I don't know if you guys caught on to that as of yesterday with the gameplay itself and what we saw over on Twitter at the reveal, but it's actually a damage dealt system now. So you don't actually get specific kills, you get a tracker for how much damage you do to enemy players. So that'll be very interesting to see how that works out. Of course, that also helps in the assist counting as kills type of thing as well, where if you end up shooting somebody, you end up getting credit for that too in a sense because, well, it all goes to the damage dealt category. But that's one real big curveball that I'm not entirely sure if I like just yet, and I'm not sure if that's something that's too far gone that can't be actually remedied in time, whereas say we saw like the Division overhaul with World War II. That was a complete fundamental change of the game. I don't know if this is too fundamental to completely change if everybody decides they hate it. I don't know, but that'll be something interesting. And though it doesn't necessarily truly affect how the gameplay itself plays out, it's just weird to me. But the next thing that I want to talk about a little bit is the new abilities and items. This, honestly, I'm not going to break them down into specific detail just because there is a ton of them. And that's where I really just want to focus on it. There is so much new stuff in this game to play around with. Between each and every one of our games, I went back to the menu and tried to like read as much as possible. And truly, I was still incredibly overwhelmed. I probably had about, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes of just looking at menus in the areas of before, between, and after the gameplay that we ended up getting. So it was something that I had a lot of time to read over everything, and there is truly so much to this game that I'm very much so looking forward to learning more so, and also looking forward to sharing more with you guys. So that'll be something very fun, that'll be something very cool. So hopefully that's something that, again, is kind of fun that we can explore this together. Next up on the table I want to talk about is the specialists, because we had 8 of them available to play around with, that being Battery, Ajax, Torque, Firebreak, Crash, Recon, Ruin, and Seraph. And the interesting part about this, on what is a little bit of a breakaway from what we know of the specialist system so far with Black Ops 3, is of course you can only use one at a time. That is a big thing here with the create a class itself and going into the games, because you don't choose before you go into the match, you choose in the match, and it's really a mad rush to see who gets what first, because it's first come first serve, which can be a little chaotic. You can have people that may take forever to choose their specialist specialist, you may have people that actually just do it all, the entire team, in like 3 seconds. So it's a very weird situation that Call of Duty has not yet seen. Other games, yes, have, but it is interesting to see how this plays out in particular. And I'm also up in the air with how I feel like this is more so a competitive build with specialists in public matches, because it is once again very reminiscent of Rainbow Six Siege in that sense. Obviously, you respawn and all that kind of stuff, but the entire core fundamentals of how these specialists work very much so remind me of the operator system in Rainbow Six Siege. Now, completely biased here, I do enjoy Rainbow Six Siege, so personally on that sense, I'm not too bothered, but I know it is a breakaway from the traditional Call of Duty, which is something that may not be everyone's favorite cup of tea. The next thing though I want to talk about is actually new modes, because we should be getting a couple of these if my guess were to hold true with this. We ended up actually seeing a new one, which we debuted on the channel yesterday even. It's called Control, where it's essentially a hard point but with a limited number of lives. So when we started it, it's a round of 3 type of basis, where the first team to get to 3 rounds won is the winner of the game overall, but it's almost a back and forth type of thing where you have to defend the control points and attack and take the control points. And this is one that honestly was a lot of fun, but it's, I think, up in the air with the lobby you end up having, because as you saw by the gameplay and everything yesterday, my lobbies actually were pretty good in favor of me getting good footage. But I know my friends like Exclusive Ace were having a really tough time on Control in general, just because it is very possible to be spawn trapped beyond belief in that mode, because you all spawn back and one of the control points is actually very close to the spawn, so you kind of get a choke point going where if somebody can hold that, well, it's going to be really tough for the team to advance. So that's something that I'm hoping kind of gets remedied a little bit, but overall it was a very fun new mode, but it really is dependent on the players you have around you. The final 2 things I want to talk about and give my thoughts on are 1, map size, and then the 5v5 aspect of multiplayer overall. Map size, I very much so enjoyed. They were very smaller maps. From what I heard, one of the maps we actually played yesterday, I think it was like the snowy hangar one, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, that was the biggest one, and that's still relatively small. But when we think about that, I think that it really does help keep the game chaotic, a very nice flow and feel to it. So for that, I'm hoping the map size stays relatively small in comparison to what we have seen already. As for 5v5, I think that ties hand in hand with map size, because obviously it's not the standard 6v6 we've seen forever. It is a little bit of a change up, and that's something that, again, a lot of people think it might even play into the competitive nature with the push at the reveal of League play and the potential ideology of even moving esports and competitive to 5v5 instead of 4v4 to kind of match it with so many other games out there on the market. That'll be interesting if that plays out, but again, 5v5 is a big difference from what we've seen, but it does not feel like all that great a difference from the modes that we played. Maybe it'll change in TDM or something like that, where you don't have to play as objective oriented or anything, but in the modes that we played of domination, control, and then hardpoint as well, it was very competitive, it was very fun, and there was always action to be seen. So that's something that if you're worried about that right now, I don't think that you really should be all that much, but I totally understand where you are. So wrapping it all up, once again, I just think it's too early for me to give a like, dislike, love, hate type of rating on it, but I had fun. That's once again my big takeaway here with it. I'm very excited to get more hands-on with it with the beta. That'll be something that'll be interesting when that is actually announced, because that's something that I think we can really get our full hands-on and really dive into our thoughts on what it could entail. So that said, at this point, again, all I hope for is some open-mindedness, because that's where I go into it, and I think that it's just a lot more constructive and we can get a lot more done by being open-minded and then giving our feedback in a not even positive manner, but just something that isn't overtly toxic. So that's something that I'm hoping that we as a community can do that. But of course, all opinions and everything are valid. Again, my only thing is that I hope we can keep it civil. So that said, I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Is there anything in particular that you're necessarily up in the air on? Anything you like, you hate, whatever it may be, feel free to let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. But again, big takeaways from this, you need to play a little bit of it at least before you can accurately judge the game, because I've played it, I've seen it, and I still don't even think I can accurately judge it. So that said, want to get your thoughts and feedback, at least general ideas on everything, drop them down there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, hopefully you guys have been enjoying the Black Ops 4 content, and hopefully you guys do enjoy what we have up on the horizon, because we have so much stuff planned. I'm so excited to grind out some Black Ops 4 stuff for you guys the next couple of days. So that said, drop a like if you guys enjoy, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new and don't want to miss any of that, because like I said, we got some really cool stuff that I want to share with you guys for Black Ops 4 coming up. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of it. So follow me over on Twitter if you guys are not doing so already. Best way to get connected with me outside of YouTube, practically live on Twitter. So if you want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is in the description below. And if you guys want to follow me over on Instagram as well, trying to get more active over there as well. So that link is also in the description below. But other than that, I hope you guys on a fantastic day. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later in a second video. Take care and peace.